Good morning, all out there.
Are we muted?
Muted.
We're not.
We're live.
Good morning.
We are live.
Okay, good morning, all. We'll call the meeting to order at 9:01 according to my watch. And so many cheat sheets here from Peggy. Do you want to introduce Stephanie now before we get started?
Well, you can just do the approval of the minutes.
Okay, and then,
Yeah.
she is out, okay. Peggy included the minutes in the email that she sent out. The minutes from our March 14th meeting. Should that, as always, is there a motion to accept? Are there any additions or corrections? Let's go there first.
Make a motion, we accept the minute as presented.
Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Carrie. All in favor? Wave your hands, people. Miriam and Jeff.
Well, Anya doesn't need to.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
Miriam.
Miriam doesn't either.
Oh,
So,
that's right.
yeah.
Never mind. Okay. Minutes stand approved. Thank you. All righty, we will move into Food Center Authority updates.
Yep, thank you very much, Madam Chair. First thing I'm gonna do is just acknowledge that we have a new board member, Stephanie Jager, and she is with the Organic Trade Association, which got a wonderful write-up in this month's business, produce business. And apparently, as a result of the effort of the association, organics are increasing their portion of total produce sales. That's great. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
Enjoyed taking you on a tour of the market. That was a lot of fun. And so with that, under the produce market update, we've seen a lot of activity on the produce market, more than we have, in recent years. I think COVID kind of kicked everybody in the pants, and now I think we're starting to see the rebound from COVID, and there's a lot more activity on the market, so that's a good thing. There is, I think we're going to see some changes that may affect the market from a legislative point of view. I'm waiting for all the legislation to be signed by the governor and be able to review it. But I think one of the changes is going to be with respect to confidentiality agreements and restricted areas of employment. When you sign up with a company, they want to have a non-compete and they want to have confidentiality. I think the legislature was looking at reestablishing the limits on which those agreements can be required of an employee. It used to be that everybody had to sign the same agreement, but now it seems that I think if their salary range is below like 35,000, then you can't ask them to sign that. And then of course, the other standards are there, the non-compete can't be overbroad, and then the confidentiality agreements. So in the produce industry or in the food industry in general, we know that the industry is very competitive and they are able to compete based on the way they do business, who they do business with, how they do business. So they try to specialize in an industry that would be mostly commodity driven. So why would you buy tomatoes from one company and not the other if it's not just based on price? But a lot of it is consistency of the product relative to the display. They put a display of the product, and if you're buying the product, and those companies that honor the entire purchase to be the same as the display, they're able to distinguish themselves from other companies that may not do so. But those are the two major things that I saw. I attended the Maryland State Bar Association, and we were looking at different changes in the law, and a lot of it, is obviously they're focusing on what's going to come out of the Supreme Court and see how that might affect local laws, and so I'm trying to stay abreast of all of that, so I can know what is going to affect us, what might affect the industry, and so forth. And that's all I have on the update, on the produce market. I'll get into, some other issues that are more confidential issues when we go into executive session. So, Angela?
Thank you, Don.
Turn it over to you.
Very much. So what we're gonna do today, I'm gonna go through several different items, but only one of them requires a vote. So we'll get rid of all the things we don't need a vote for first, and then we'll finish up with the vote, which will be related to our CCAPs. So the first item that I wanted to discuss is that, for your benefit, we use the picture, I think it's okay, we don't have anybody to go for the market. So what you have right here is it used to be called Maryland Wholesale Seafood Market. And this whole area back here has been redeveloped, and now this whole section is now called the Maryland Market Center. There were 3 buildings that were built in that undeveloped section. And so we have been working for years to get these documents, these developer agreement documents, completed, agreed to by multiple different parties, and then signed. And then these agreements then had to go to Howard County to be filed. So all of that work is now finished, and all of the different parties are paying their proportionate share of the expenses back there. So I just wanted to let everyone know that that is completely finished. The county is holding $1.2 million of MFCA money as a surety to complete the project. And so we are almost finished the project. The only thing that's holding us up right now is the forest conservation work, and Gary's gonna touch on that.
So forest conservation work, we're making stuff as we go, the debris and tires and stuff like that. From the area, we've also planted all the signs in the appropriate areas, but the survey wasn't detailed enough for the property lines. We had a shed, fence, and also, I believe there's a tank from a plumbing company that they've put underground that we have to now get a more detailed survey of the property line. And we can just continue the investigation from there, so we can get the equipment moved and we have the proper documentation.
And we're working very closely with Miriam on those issues. So once that is finished, then the county will just give us the $1.2 million back. So just know that money is coming back, they're just holding it, and this board did approve that $1.2 million, but we will be getting that back.
So that's Howard County Forest requires, okay.
The next item is, for the last several years, we've had a lot of challenges with our audit and with the timing and the, see everyone laughing. There have been challenges. With getting the audit performed, having the technical know-how to do it. And so what we did was we went out for bid, and then the first auditor that was awarded the contract, we ended up having to terminate that contract because they did not perform. And we went to the second lowest bidder from when we went out to bid, and we awarded the contract to them. And what is great about that is 20 years ago, they used to do our audit, so they know who we are. So we are already underway with our audit. They are already working on the preliminary work, and everything is going very smoothly. It is wonderful. Next item is leasing. Down at the Maryland Market Center, we have had a tenant who has been an issue for many years. And what we do at the food center is we do everything that we can to keep our tenants, to help our tenants, to make them successful. But when you are not paying your rent on time, or when you have a pest control issue and you're not doing what we need you to do, when your business license has been suspended and it has not been revived, there are things that come up where eventually we just have to say, okay, we have to terminate this lease. So we did terminate the lease for one space down at the Maryland Market Center. We're already working with the first tenant who's on the wait list. What we're doing is we're going to, back in 2018, 2019, we did a redevelopment of many units in an existing building. And so what we're gonna do in this new space that's coming back is we're gonna do the exact same renovation that we did last time. We're gonna demo everything that's inside and update everything so that someone is getting essentially a new unit. So what we have right now, So we have an existing tenant that we're working with, and if they fall through, then we have two other tenants who are dying to get their hands on this unit, so there is a lot of demand, and that's not even going to the wait list. It's just existing tenants who are looking for space. So we will get that leased out as soon as we are finished the project. We're in the process of getting the drawings right now for that. And then over at the Clam House, we have a person who owns two different companies. They do two totally different things. So we have two different leases with this person. And one of the companies has a single unit and one of the other companies has 3 units. And that tenant, we have now done 3 different workout plans to get them current. And so again, we do everything we can, but eventually there comes a time where you just have to draw the line. And so what ended up happening with this tenant is the lease with the 1 unit on it, they have given that back to us. So we have terminated that lease. And for the other 3 units, they paid in full everything that they were delinquent. So that is now current. The amount of rent that we collected for that 1 single unit that's tiny is $200 a month. So we're not talking about a big space here, but I just wanted to let everyone know we did get 1 back, and in the future we'll be looking to lease that out.
Just for the benefit of Stephanie and some others, we have a Rock Hall Plant House, which is over in Rock Hall. It was a project that we got involved in the early 90s, and we work closely with the town of Rock Hall and try to make sure that we're catering to the businesses in the town. And so again, you know, Angela and Gary, they work really closely with the tenants and try to help them stay in in our buildings. But when it comes down to it, if they're not paying rent or anything else, then it becomes unfair for everybody else. And the word got out that somebody's getting away with not paying the rent, then nobody would pay the rent, and we wouldn't have income to take care of the building. So, so it's an ongoing challenge, both in the market and over in Rock Hall, just to make sure that people are paying their way and that they're able to compete in the business arena. So.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate that, because whenever we have someone new, it's really important to set the table for you. So thank you so much. You jump in anytime.
Will we rent out boat slips there as well?
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, both slips, and then it was a processing facility for clams and oysters. And the whole facility was used for either storing clams and oysters in refrigerated areas or being shot. But that took a dive during the Wisteria problem, when you had fish showing up with sores and red tide and all these other things that affect the quality of the oysters. And when the business dropped down, then the shuckers dispersed. I mean, it was hard, you know, they had to find employment to go something else. And so it's a very labor intensive business to be shucking clams and oysters. So we divided the plant up into different areas so that we could lease it out. And now it's kind of a multi-use marine building, and which actually is consistent with Rock Hall's comprehensive zoning plan. So when we went in to argue about the shift from being a clam and oyster plant to a multi-use plan, I referred to their comprehensive zoning plan and said, look, this is an adaptive reuse of a marine facility, and it's still going to be used for marine activity. And as Ryan pointed out, we do have slips that we run to water, and we have a pier so that they can unload their boats and that sort of thing. And then we also rent some space too. I think one of the watermen down there rents space from us. So it's a pretty active site now. I mean, we spent a considerable amount of money restoring that facility a couple of years ago, because it had kind of fallen into disrepair when nobody was in the building doing anything with it. But now that the building is being used in 5 years, it becomes Gary's problem. So he goes over there occasionally to talk to tenants who are falling behind, find out what's going on, and then just to make sure that the building's continuing to look like a facility that we would be proud of. So
We just installed cameras there as well, so we're able to monitor the situation.
Any chance we might be able to make a visit over there sometime?
Yeah, the last time we did that, it was during a renaming ceremony, because when we bought the facility, I guess I just thought that it should be called the Rock Hall Seafood Processing Plant. But nobody over there ever called it the Rock Hall Seafood Processing Plant, they all called it the Clam House. We did a rededication of the facility. We had a local artist come up with a new logo for the building, and then there was a mural that was painted on the one side. And we had some kids that were part of painting it and that sort of thing, so it was a real community effort. But yeah, we can arrange that, we would all have to meet here. If you want to drive there yourselves, you can, but if you want to, we can arrange to have a bus take us over there.
I vote for the MFCA vote to be purchased.
Oh.
I'm sorry, you're a little out. And just for the sake of our folks online, a great idea, Susan. Speak with vigor so that they can hear.
Excuse me, will be vigorous.
It wasn't directed at any single person. But it's hard to pick up, especially if you look this way and you don't talk loud.
Because the speaker is up here,
Yeah.
right? Our,
It is.
our magical IT saint here. Thank you.
Yeah, we can arrange to do that.
Yeah.
Just understand, it would have to be in addition to a board meeting, because we
Yeah,
can't.
right.
So,
We can't discuss business.
yeah,
I understand, right.
yeah.
Field trip.
And at the last board meeting, we spoke about our IT policy that we are just now completing, and also our document retention policy. And I just wanted to update the board to let everyone know that everyone at the food center that is part of this document retention policy took part in a 3-week training given by the Maryland State Archives. And so everyone has now been trained on this. The end result is that at some point, we're going to be able to purge all of the documents that we don't need anymore, and then continue to purge as directed in the document retention policy. And then we're gonna talk about CCAP. So this is the one that we're gonna need the vote for when we're finished. So whenever the Food Center Authority wants to enter into a lease with a tenant, we have to.
35-page document. that-
Don't worry, don't
Sure you
need
all
that
are.
right now. You don't need your, no,
Read it
no.
all word for word.
And highlighted, I know. So the lease approval process is that first we will create the lease, and we work very closely with Miriam to do this. We also talk to the tenant to ensure that what we are offering is something that they're agreeable to before we bring it to the board. Then I will give you a presentation today of the lease. Then if you approve, then the next step is we go to the Maryland Board of Public Works. And then after that, we would execute the lease with the tenant. This lease that we're gonna look at today was originally created, I believe it was 2003. And I came in 2004. And in 2003, apparently they weren't using Word here because there is no Word document that exists of this lease. So Miriam and I worked very hard to create this lease that you see in front of you because it just didn't exist. Let's see here.
Yeah, we're perfect. Oh, thrilled, yeah.
So then what we do is all the people who work with the tenant, we get together and we discuss the areas where we have experienced challenges since the last time that we had the lease. And so we have the opportunity to get those challenges put into the lease so that we can give the MFCA more protection. So we anticipate having this lease to be executed by September 1st, as long as we get your approval today and the Board of Public Works approval. And then this lease closely resembles that 2003 lease. And so what we're gonna do today is I'm just gonna go through the changes from the last lease, because keep in mind, this lease that we're gonna look at, it was approved by this board, and it was also approved by the Board of Public Works previously. So we're only gonna go through the things that are different. And then when we're finished, we will need a motion, and please feel free to ask any questions as we go through. Here we go, now I have it. Okay.
We'll call this background versus discussion. We got the background, then we'll ask for a motion, and then any further discussion and questions.
Perfect.
Does that make sense?
Is that fuzzy or are my eyes really bad?
It's speaking.
Yeah, it looks.
It's a
It
rule.
does look weird. And is there any chance that you can put the pictures across the bottom or across the top? Yeah. Thank you.
You're a little.
Okay, so of course, the first thing that changed is the amount of rent that we're gonna collect, because that certainly has gone up since 2003, 2004. But what's interesting about this lease compared to all of our other leases is that our other leases are tied to the consumer price index change, but they have a 4% maximum. And so what that means is that over the last several years, when CPI has been 7.5%, this tenant has been subject to 7.5% rent increase in their rent. And I can tell you, I feel terrible when that happens, because I know all of our other leases offer this 4% protection to the tenant. But what we do know, and we can certainly argue this if we get to the Board of Public Works, is if any of our leases approximate market, it's gonna be this lease, because every single year it has gone up by the consumer price index over the last 20+ years. So this is the amount that we'll be receiving annually. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to ask to include that maximum 4% to give this tenant the same protection that all the other tenants have for our leases.
And just for the record, this is the first time and last time you'll hear Angela feel bad about increasing some, having additional revenue coming in, so.
I think it will.
Okay, and so the next item, gosh, it's so fuzzy. The next item is that the lease term is going to be 10 years. The prior lease was 7 years. With the introduction of GASB 87, which is the accounting pronouncement related to leasing, just to make our lives as simple as possible, we'll do a 10-year amortization rather than a 72-month amortization. So we'll just stick with the 120. And then the next item is that the amount that was in the last lease, I believe it was like $7,000. So the new monthly rental starting on September 1st will be $11,981.58. And then the renewal term. In the last lease, it was worded so, I mean, you had to have a doctorate to figure out what the renewal terms were within the last lease. So we have simplified it. And we have said that there will be an additional 2 10-year optional renewals. So this could potentially be a 30-year lease, and just at gross, that's $5.2 million for the Fleet Center Authority. The next item,
Excuse me, while you do each item, can you let us know either, I'm trying to flip and keep up with you and I can't read that, so, and put it in my pages, do you know what page they're on, or?
this is very close to the front.
Yeah.
Page 3.
Page
Yeah.
3, I got that, but
We're at V at X. I'm going to go on to X.
Okay,
Thanks,
that's
that's
helpful.
great.
Thanks, Gary.
Got it. So X is security deposit, and the way that the lease was worded before is it simply had the dollar amount of the first month's rent back in 2003, which was obviously significantly less than it is now. So what we are doing is we've changed it so that it is 1 month's rent, and the tenant knows that September 1st's invoice will include that difference so that we can bring up the security deposit that we're holding to the amount of 1 month's rent. We're going to page 5 now. We're on page 5. And in the last lease, the late payment section was again complicated. It was one of those where if you pay between 1 and 5 days late, it's 5%. Between 6 and 10, it's 10%. If it's more than it's 15%. All of our other leases are very simple. You get 10 calendar days, and if you are late on the 11th day, then it's a 15% late charge. We like, I mean, especially us in billing, because Gary does the deposit, we like to give them this grace period because we are human beings and things happen from time to time. So we would much rather give them that period. And then if they don't pay by the 11th, then they get their 15% late charge. So this is different than the original lease.
But it matches the other leases.
The other leases, yes.
Okay.
Okay, now we are on page 6. And we are under item 8, conduct on leased premises, common areas, indemnification. You're gonna see throughout this document that there has been a lot of stormwater maintenance language that has been added. And that's because stormwater wasn't a thing back when this lease was done before. So what we added here, and this is based on, as I said, we discussed before we go and create the lease, real issues that happen down at that facility. And so we say that the tenant understands and acknowledges that it may not store anything outside of the property due to stormwater issues. So now we have that in the lease and we can come back to that if the tenant does not comply. But they will, they're great. Alright, now we are on page 10, tenant repairs. And under tenant repairs, again, we're talking about stormwater language, and this is based on an example that has actually happened. So we are asking them to keep the dock clear of seafood, sheen, and other hazards. What does that mean? Let's explain what this property does. This is a seafood cross-docking facility. The seafood industry has really crazy hours. They start at like 1, 2 in the morning, and then they are all gone by no later than 10, and most of them are gone earlier than that. But it's not unlikely that a delivery needs to happen at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, but there's no one down there to accept the delivery at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. Well, that's where this business comes in. This is a cross-docking facility. So that delivery driver who goes to this facility, backs up to the dock, unloads the seafood into boxes. The boxes go into this tenant's freezer, and then whenever the tenant is open, it gets loaded back onto the truck and then delivered when they're open. So the seafood sheen that we're experiencing on the dock is as a result of those boxes and something inside those boxes, and then it rains, and then the sheen ends up into the stormwater, which is a big issue for us. So we're asking them to clean the dock appropriately so that we don't face any stormwater issues. We also ask them, and they're aware of this, that that's okay. We asked them to know they are responsible to replace the filter that is in the interceptor, which is something that we use to catch things before it gets into stormwater. And so they are aware of this. Big gap. I know there's a big gap now. Start turning. Okay, we're on page 19 now. Page 19, and it's item 38, counterparts. We did have a counterparts clause before, but this has changed because now we allow all of these to be executed via electronic signatures. That's the purpose of this. And then section 39 is the clause for stormwater. This is our standard language that is in all of our leases. So if you go to look at any lease that's been executed since stormwater has been a thing, you're going to find this wording within the lease.
So for the other tenants, has that been added in renewal similar to this?
Absolutely,
Okay.
and when we did a lease in 2023, it was added in that, the BTS lease, the NAFCO leases, they've all had this added.
So they've all been updated.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. In the next edition, we are on page 20 now. And we're on item number 40, which is compostable waste. And there is a regulation that exists now that anyone that has food waste, which is compostable, it must go to an anaerobic digester if you're located within a certain distance from the anaerobic digester. This particular tenant is a box in, box out, so I wouldn't expect them to have this, but if something changes and they change their business model, we want to make sure that they're aware that if they do have compostable waste, they are required by law to take it to the anaerobic digester.
Are they required to use the one that is here?
I don't know that that's a
No,
Or
requirement.
is it somewhere?
Yeah,
Just some.
and it's the
Okay.
most convenient. It would be the least expensive way.
It would
Right.
definitely be really
Strongly urged, but not required.
Yeah.
And then item 41, this is a brand new clause in the lease, and this is just to communicate to any tenant that we are an agency with the state of Maryland, and we may from time to time have to disclose information about the tenant to the Board of Public Works, also to the Maryland General Assembly. We also let them know that we are subject to the Public Information Act, and it does happen from time to time that we do get requests. And we want to be sure that the tenant understands that if there's anything that we have received them, we know about them, that there's something that they believe should not be disclosed under this act, they need to let us know in writing. That doesn't mean it won't be disclosed. It will be disclosed if it is required to be disclosed under the law, but at least it's them giving us the information of what we need to investigate to determine if it can be disclosed. And we would obviously work very closely with Marion. We are gonna go past the signatures. And then in the exhibits, in the last lease in 2003, Exhibit D was something called protected covenants. And the food center previously had protected covenants that prohibited anyone other than entities in the food industry from occupying space in the food center. And so the protected covenants have been removed from this lease because they expired in January 2020. So that entire section of the lease is gone, but this has been replaced with Exhibit D, repayment of costs incurred in anticipation of expansion. So we'll get to that in a minute. Exhibit A is their leased premises. This leased premises from 2003 was slightly different. There was a lease amendment that was entered into during the last lease that what in the original lease premises did not include the entire site, but then it was best for CCAP to be responsible for everything that happens within the border of their site. So anything that happens within here is the responsibility of CCAP and not food center. Exhibit B, these are our tenant-specific other charges. This is standard in every lease that we do. This particular tenant will probably not be subject to all of these things, but you just don't know. For example, rail charges. I don't know that they're ever going to have rail charges, but if they ever are, we can charge them for it because it's in the lease. Obviously, that's a big deal in the produce market. Exhibit C, this is the rules. And these rules are standard in all of our leases. The rules were revised in 2023, the last time that we went to the Board of Public Works for a market lease. So these are standard. And then finally, what everyone's been waiting for, Exhibit D. The owner of CCAP approached us several years ago and was interested in expanding their facility to make their food bigger. The Food Center Authority put in just under $100,000 into this project. And just before we were about to get Howard County approval, they pulled out of the project. And so because they pulled out of the project, we were requiring them to repay us every penny that we paid on that project. And so they are going to be repaying us $95,448.61 over a period of 5 years. When I met with the tenant, his first question when we went over this was, is there a penalty if I want to prepay that? And of course, there is not a penalty if you want to prepay that. Please feel free to prepay this whenever you want to repay it. So we did add, at his request, prepayment in full of the balance owed will not incur a penalty. So that was a tenant requested change. And we're going to be doing this over 5 years and at 0%. And this is the end of the lease at that point. That's the last page. So then the next step would be for the board to ask questions and discuss it. And then if you approve it, then the next step would be to, well, you know, I did skip over one step, Stephanie. I will tell you one thing that happens before we go to the Board of Public Works is we request a pre-meeting. And the pre-meeting happens 1 week prior to the Board of Public Works meetings. And so we sit at a table and we're with very smart people at the state and they just ask many questions about the lease. And we try to work out everything before you get to the actual Board of Public Works meeting. So we will be requesting that pre-meeting once we get approval here. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
Okay. So with that as background, I will entertain a motion to approve the CCAP Incorporated lease as presented to submit this lease to the Maryland Board of Public Works.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, question.
Let's get the motion on the floor and then we'll have further discussion. So your motion,
No.
okay,
So moved.
Carrie, and a second. Second. Susan. Now, are there questions and or discussion.
How do we come up with 0% interest on the repayment of the expansion costs?
We came up with 0% because this is a long-standing tenant that we have an excellent relationship with. And we certainly can empathize with why he had to back out of the project. And we would like to continue a nice relationship with this tenant into the future. And so this was just something we were doing as our public purpose at the food center.
We used to not even require that, but some of the inquiries more recently as to what we can do to the site to improve it for the benefit of the tenant. They get more and more costly. And so we're at least setting it up that they pay it back. We're not gonna charge them, we're not setting it up as a loan, it's just a zero interest payback. And at least that way, it's not that hard for them when they do something like that, and we at least recapture our money. We lose the benefit of the time value of money, but it's not that much. And as Angela says, we try to make sure that the tenants are be healthy. We don't wanna, overly burden them with all these payback things, so. Yeah.
And we try to help in any way that we can.
Mark,
Angela, in the discussion on the annual lease rent,
let me give us a page number, Mark.
that's one issue.
Oh, thank you.
So my interpretation, of what you were saying was this tenant has paid at a higher rate than the other tenants, and we want to change the comments.
Not always, they don't always pay more, because if CPI has been less than 4%, then they were paying the same.
Okay,
They were paying the exact same. It's only been in these last few years where CPI went crazy
okay.
that they were negatively impacted.
So my question on that is, why was this lease agreement established the way it was in 2003? It'd be really good to know that, so we know what was the decision at that point, why was that made?
It was before my time. I did not work here at that time, so I wouldn't be able to.
I mean, so when I was negotiating the lease with the tenant, I typically don't say to the tenant, well, we're gonna fix, what your interest rate is gonna be. If they push back for it, then I'm open to discussing it, but they didn't. And since then, at the markets and everything else, the tenants all work together on giving us comments on the lease, and in the other leases, the attorneys representing the tenants said, can we put a cap on it? Can we bottom it out? And so we came up with a range that so that they would take a fluctuating expense, potentially fluctuating expense, and turn it into a more fixed expense based on knowing that the worst it's gonna be is this, the least it's gonna be is that.
I also do remember, because when I first started here, those leases that, the market leases, which, we've done several times since then, those specific leases had 3% increases every year.
Yeah.
And I remember the tenant saying, it's only 1.2% CPI, why am I paying 3% more? And it was in our next set of leases that I was a part of, that we tied it to CPI. If the economy's doing better, then the tenants are doing better. If the economy isn't doing better, the tenants aren't doing better. And so we wanted to free them from that 3%. So back when this was done, the leases at that time were 3% automatics at both times. So it was a very different climate back then when this was negotiated.
Okay, so there's no sense of favoritism with making this change for this tenant.
Absolutely not. It just makes it consistent with everything else. It does the exact, does the exact opposite of that. It's making it so that we're not discriminating against them. We're not doing something to them that we're not doing anywhere else. We're doing this exactly.
Thank you.
It's a great question too.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah. I did the rough math on this, it's like $12.45 a square foot, which seems pretty decent. similar to the market around here for warehouse space. So I think we're getting a pretty fair deal here, and that is just the base rent. It doesn't include operating expense reimbursements, which we're getting 100%. So everything looks good as far as that's concerned. I was just curious, how did we come up with this? I know you said that we had a base rent from early 2000s and it's been escalated per CPI. Is that where we're at now, or was there some kind of a market rent study completed to determine?
No, it's CPI, straight from then, and back when the original lease would have had to have been done, there would have had to have been a market study, they would have requested that at the Board of Public Works meeting. The difference between now and then is because they had CPI every year, they had no restraint on what CPI was, so that's why market makes sense today, that's why the numbers work. Because it was based on market at that time, and then it's just jumped forward without any cap since then. This is the most comfortable I have ever been taking a lease to the Board of Public Works because of that.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out that way with the CPI, I mean, not being market, but yeah, I think we're really close, so yeah, it's working out. And in the future, I think 4% is fair as a max. I feel like that's pretty typical for the market. When you have a long-term lease, 10 years, you want to make sure that you're covering, as a landlord, that you're covering yourself for any fluctuations in the market, so that gives us some wiggle room. I think 7.5% was high, so the adjustment makes sense. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you for being able to do math in your head. We're staying up all last night reading the document, so thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? This is been a long-term tenant, long-term lease.
In fact, the building was built for them.
Yeah.
This was a newly constructed building in 2003.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I just looked to see what they do, so I didn't know what they do, the transportation people.
They bring the product comes in, they put it in their freezer and they take it back out and then they take it to the.
They transport all of your seafood needs.
Our seafood needs, okay.
Excuse me for a moment.
Yeah.
Miriam just
Oh,
wanted to say
Miriam.
something real quick.
Thank you, Mary.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Angela, if you could take a quick.
Miriam, hold on one
We're
second.
gonna
We
turn you
have
up
to
just a little bit.
Okay,
Stephanie, by the way.
testing,
you're-
1, 2, 3.
Provides legal counsel. Sorry.
Can you say something else, please?
Test again, Miriam.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Just speak with confidence, just.
I will
just
speak.
Shout at us a little bit.
All right. The description of the leased premises in the definitions, when you were scrolling through that, Angela, I think I saw a typo, but I wanted to double check that before the board votes on it. Did it say that it was parcel 8-2 or parcel B2?
Did you hear the parcel number?
These premises.
Give us a second, we're gonna try to also.
Under the definition of, in the definition.
You know, that probably is B, you know, with the export from PDF to Word. So we will pull that from the county map and confirm.
Okay, because you have the plat as Exhibit A, and it seemed to read B2, but it wasn't clear. So I just want to make sure that those two things are consistent.
So here
That's
it
all.
is.
Yeah.
When it came from PDF to Word, it
Oh,
took
right.
B2 and made it E2.
Okay. So page 2. We will take this as a friendly change, if that's okay, Miriam.
No objection.
Okay, page 2, lease premise. Letter L. Property known as 7950 Tar Bay Drive, Jessup, block B, parcel B2, B2 instead of A2.
Thank you.
Appreciate legal eagle eye, Miriam. Thank you. That's good, great catch. Yes, okay.
Can I piggyback off that? The property description, letter S, it has a square footage for the warehouse. Do we have a defined acreage for the land surrounding the warehouse and lease that they're utilizing?
No, the acreage is not defined. Just the lease premises description in the back with the highlight.
Okay, yeah, with the map in the back.
Mhm.
Okay, as long as everybody's fine with that, it's highlighted, so you can tell what they're leasing.
And in the past, Board of Public Works has not needed that, what's in here is what
What's
they.
here is fine.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion on the floor to approve the revised CCAP lease with the friendly change on page 2. And then submit this lease to the Maryland Board of Public Works for approval. All in favor?
We're gonna stick with the motions as they were earlier.
Yes.
That's fine, we have to, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. All in favor? Whiteboard? All opposed? I think we're good. So thank you, everyone, and again, the eagle eyes, extra eyes on these documents. Miriam caught a typo on something else last meeting, so. All right. So, moving right along, and so many pieces of paper, okay, I love it. By the way, anything else from Gary's world on updates before we go into the review of the expenses? No, you're okay.
Yeah.
I'm just chopping down trees, huh? Getting ready to clear trees. Alrighty, the next item is our statement of revenue and expenses affecting private tenants and users. That you, Angela?
It is, and I'm looking for them.
As I say, I think I've got two versions of the lease, but I don't have them.
I don't have.
Yeah, we don't have.
Any finances.
I don't have the financial. But I didn't put it home, I knew you would.
They're terrific.
Or maybe just review them a little bit since you do.
Yeah, we were sent them.
Okay, so it's really just an approval process. It's not really technically a motion, so. it'll be okay.
I'm going from memory here.
Hold on my phone.
The Maryland Market Center, I mean, the thing that the tenant, okay, let's start over, Stephanie. So the way that these work, we have these statements that show how much we collected for entrance fees, how much money we collected for rail. These are things related to the market, the revenue that we collect. And then what we do is we see what is the cost for everything it takes to run the market. So you've got that number now. Whatever the difference is between those two is the amount that we ask the tenants to reimburse us. We don't charge an admin fee on top of any costs. We're not trying to make a profit. Whatever we pay is what we charge the tenants. So in this report, the most important number that the tenants care about is in the second column in the very bottom number. And so at this point right now, the Maryland Market Center, I believe they have a very, very small deficit, which means that we would charge them a teeny tiny little bit if April was the last month of the year. Of course, it's not. Things would happen between now and then. And over at the produce market, it is larger. The deficit is larger at that market. We've had to use a lot of temp labor this year. We've had a lot of trouble hiring people. We just hired another security guard this week. So we've had some turnover in that area. We have a really good maintenance staff now. We have a very solid maintenance staff. So we've had them here, all this team has been here for a while now. There was a period of time where our maintenance staff was the same people, and we're talking year after year after year. And it seems to me, having done this for so long, I suddenly got a payroll and it's like, who are all these people? Because I didn't know, like, we were all new people. And so we've now got a really good maintenance staff, and we're not using any temps for maintenance right now. It's just for security. So the costs have been higher. And when we do the June report that we're talking about right now, if there is a deficit, we will bill the tenants over a period of time to make that number be 0. If we collect too much, we give that money back right away to every single tenant. And that does happen. Like, I'm sure some people would hear that and go, I'm sure that never happened. It definitely does happen. And we give the money right back the very first month back to the tenants.
And
So that's
can
where
I
we
just
are.
say for a moment, we do have them up on here to show, so everybody can see them.
Thank you.
Okay, so over at the produce market, this is the number I was talking about that we care so much about. 82,035.98, that's the number that we care about. So if that was divided over all 100 spaces down at the market, and if this was June, which it's not, but if it was, then each tenant would have to pay $800 to make this zero out. Can you go to the next one, please? Okay, and here's the Maryland Market Center, and you can see their deficit is $40,000. And the one thing that jumps right out at me is you can see that entrance fees are down 10,000 from prior year. You can look at your salaries and wages. Do you see the big bump in salaries and wages? And motor vehicle operations is up. And just so that you know, these revenue and disbursement reports are created monthly. And then I do analytical procedures to all of the documents, and I send this out to the operations team. They review these R&Ds, they get back with any questions, any changes, and then we finalize them. And then they also go to the tenants. So if this was June, which is not, we would be doing $40,000 to the Maryland Market Center as well. And I will bring that June back to you. You will see what the final number was here. Thank you.
And there's really no relationship between revenue and expenses. Revenue is one thing, expenses are something else. We just apply the revenue to cover the cost of the expenses.
Yeah, this isn't rent. This has nothing to do with rent. These are just expenses, the cost of running the market.
I do have one question. What is kind of driving the factor of travel? I see it was like 175 to 0, and this year it jumped up. Is it related to Rock Hall project or going back and forth?
Well, that is part of it. So one of the things that hasn't happened for a long time is any travel to do conferences, trainings, or anything like that. We've done nothing
Yeah,
since
I think that's
2020 because of COVID, and we're starting again. We're all going out now and going and getting our trainings that we need. But yes, travel does show up to go to Rock Hall, and so that costs $150 for the mileage reimbursement each time. Yeah, so it's a lot. The cameras are great.
Thank you, and thank you.
And I was gonna
Yeah.
give one other update real quick.
Okay,
The produce market expansion,
yes.
we've talked about expanding back dock at the produce market. It's proceeding, it's doing well. We have a lot of engineering reviews that we have to go through in order to get the project bid. So Gary and I met with the architects and the engineers yesterday, and we are trying to meet somewhere in the neighborhood of every 2 weeks to try and keep up with what's going on, where are the snags. We had a hard time getting electrical load information from BGE, and then we finally got that. And so the electrical engineers can compute what the electrical upgrade is going to be required in order to satisfy the tenants' use of that expansion area. And there's just a lot of things that are going into it. It seems like an easy project that we're just taking off a 12-foot dock and putting on a 25-foot dock, and then we're going to enclose it. But there's a lot of other considerations that come into play, and so.
You mean like because they're currently occupied and being used for food industry? Yes.
Well, and the facilities are older facilities, so we have to worry, we're doing a lot of investigation into what's going to happen to the walls that are part of the structure of the market that will be internal to a cooler. How are they going to sweat? What are some of the potential problems with those walls sweating because of the temperature and lowering? And so there's a lot of moving parts on it. And then we're also looking at how we might want to proceed in building it in phases. So we spent about an hour yesterday just going over a phase discussion with the architects and engineers so that we can have these complete sections being built, which will, I think, help us in trying to secure additional funding with the whole market, because we know that we don't have enough funding to do the whole market. But if we can get one section done, and then we can use that as a model of what we're looking to replicate throughout the whole market, and learn from it. Let that section be used and then give feedback from the tenants in the area that the section has been improved, so that we can know whether or not we need to make modifications going forward. So we'll keep the board updated on that. There has been a difficult time with professional services in maintaining qualified people working in companies. And those of you in the private sector are probably more aware of this. But in the engineering industry, there's been a considerable turnover due to retirements. You've got these senior engineers that are aging out, and then they retire, and then the next engineer is taking over. Not only do they have to deal with their workload, now they have to deal with the increased workload that's been left by the people that have been retiring. And so that happened to our civil engineer folks. And so, they got behind the 8 ball a little bit, but they're pulling it out, and they're moving along pretty good. I feel comfortable with what they're doing. We're hoping to be able, on the outside, if everything doesn't work out the way we want, we'll be bidding the job out somewhere around 6 months. If everything falls in line and goes according to the plan, and the approval process is expedited and done quickly, we could probably go out for bid somewhere in the 4-month range. So I'll keep you guys updated on how that's happening. And I appreciate folks like Mark, who's the one that's managing, the Department of Agriculture is managing the disbursement of the money that the former governor made available to us for this project. And then we also have money coming in from the county as well. So that's where we are on that. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, just.
I'd like to add something to that. There's,
Gary, can you speak up a little? Sorry.
there's a big impact of maneuverability for trucks because of the position of the dock being in the back, which will eliminate a lot of trailer parking, but also put all the parking fence line. And we're just making sure that all the, I guess, demos are running with traffic. Works well for the markets. The traffic goes in as it does.
Anytime you take an existing project and you try to inject new stuff, it's like squeezing a balloon at one end and then wondering why it's blowing up at the other end. And our snow removal in the past, we've had areas where we can place excess snow out of the maneuvering area at the market, but now those areas will be utilized for additional water quality structures, bioretention ponds and whatnot. And so, Gary's team down at the market won't have the luxury of stockpiling snow in an area that's out of the way. We're going to have to let the tenants know that certain areas of parking will not be available during the major snowstorm because we got to tackle that sort of thing. And so we spent a lot of time talking about things that Gary is very familiar with and I'm familiar with as far as the operations of the market and making sure that we can build the stuff with the minimal impact on the tenant. So, but there's always going to be an impact, a negative impact with every positive thing you do at the market. It's a trade-off. You're expanding the back dock, then you're going to have less parking in the back of the market. So now we have to compensate for that to the best of our ability. Can't make it perfect because the site is the site. So these are some of the challenges that we're going through in getting this project under. But I feel comfortable with the progress that's made to this point. We're at a point where it's pretty solid as to what they're going to do. We just got to figure out how we're going to phase it so that we can make sure that we have enough money to finish a phase and then use that as the showcase for going out and getting additional money. Okay, there's a lot of people in the country that are watching what we're doing because a lot of these markets were designed by USDA back in the early, I would say 60s and 70s, and they're all facing the same kind of challenges. And some of them have already been able to enclose their facilities. But a market our size is a very big market, and there are a number of zoning and planning issues that we gotta deal with. We can't bring the building up totally to today's current standards. But the county's gonna want us to get as close to it as we can, and that causes additional costs and additional disruption to the tenants, so. We're doing our best to try and minimize that.
Thanks. Tom, is there, I'm trying to remember, have you ever done a measure, I'm sure we have, of the economic activity through the produce market?
Yeah, it was done way back in the 90s. And it was dependent on, we had market data, because market services from USDA used to be on the market.
Yeah.
So they provided us data, and then the tenants told us what was going on. And back then, they figured that there was about $400 million worth of business that was transacted in the produce market alone over the course of a year. And we haven't done that since. Because I mean, the tenants are reluctant to share, their sales data, even though we tell them, well, we're just going to aggregate it all together, and nobody's going to know who does what. But there is a trust issue. I mean,
The market's also changed in that there were like 8 tenants then, and now we have 29 tenants in the same exact amount of space.
Yeah. Yeah, when I came here, we had like 40-some tenants, but
They do track prices still, but not take the fund.
yeah, we at least had market services to be able to verify whether they thought the estimates were good. And because at the time I was worried that they were going to inflate the amount of money that they were making simply to, to demonstrate that it was an economic engine for our county, which it is. And the numbers came out relatively verifiable, and it looked like that number represented the activity on the market at the time. So I would think with inflation and everything else, the level of activity would be close to that. You just can time value it from the 90s all the way up to now. But
It might be a good thing to look at.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
The 90s was a long time ago.
yeah.
I think I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm having a baby, so she's old now, she has babies.
I've got a question. I remember in past meetings, we had discussed the tenants that had been surveyed, to get their thoughts on this project, and one of the concerns that they had was their rental rate going to increase because of this? As the project takes hold, are we still taking that into consideration, and does that coincide with how you're deciding to phase this in?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the cost is is breaking it down into the base. And we know we can't do the whole market at once. And will we have to charge rent for the additional space? I think that would be prudent.
We would charge them per square foot
Yeah.
for the more space
Yeah.
that they get, because
But
we still gotta
also-
do the roof.
But also the upgrade and it being cold storage
Yeah.
probably has increased rental rate.
Yeah, I mean, well,
But
yeah,
we gotta
because
take the tenants into consideration. We don't want them to have to leave because they've been priced out, I guess.
yeah, I did a research paper on the markets like 15 years ago, and what I discovered is that the markets that are faltering, having a hard time converting their markets and keeping them upgraded, is that they had rent that was way too low. So they didn't have enough money coming in to be able to make modifications to the market as food regulations and everything changed. And so it looked like they were doing the companies a favor, but in essence, they were not doing the company a favor because they didn't have the revenue to upgrade the market. And that's what we use our money for. I mean, there's a good portion. I think I did a study once, and we spend about 60 cents of every rental dollar in repairs and everything down the market. which is, a substantial amount of money, so. Which is a lot more than most landlords are gonna spend on a rental. But, we try to take into consideration, we try to see around the corners as to what's gonna happen in the food industry. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but we're trying to keep the market, as, upgraded as possible. And like when Angela was giving, Gary kudos for having a good maintenance team. I mean, they clean that market every day. And if you had a chance to visit other wholesale markets throughout the country, you would be surprised at how much stuff is still on the ground in those markets. By the end of the day, our team's already done cleaning it up. And then the tenants are very cooperative as well. We've had them taking care of some of the areas, and the leases call that out. Over time, we've had to make modifications to what is their responsibility and what's going to be the responsibility of the general maintenance group. But I had suggested that, that all the other managers of wholesale markets, we belong to the National Association of Produce Market Managers. And that association gets together and all the market managers talk about some of the issues that they're dealing with. And I made a presentation on this paper back whenever I did it. And it was kind of an eye-opener, because it was like, it was something that they could take to their administrative body. A lot of the markets are owned by municipalities, and they can argue whether they're going to rent because the market has constituency with the politicians that are overseeing the ownership of the market. And they needed to make a strong argument that the rent has to accommodate continually making improvements to these facilities. And I don't see an end in increasing food safety. It just seems to continue to evolve. And, right now, I could take you into some of the produce companies that are actually doing value-added processing to it. And you're only allowed to look in the window, because everybody in there is in caps and gowns and booties and everything else. You could do a liver transplant plant in one of those. And because they're that sterile. But, when the markets were built, nobody thought at some point the food safety would get to the issue to a level that is unable to be accommodated in older structures. So we're trying to make small modifications as we go along.
What was the name of that organization?
National Association of Produce Market Managers, NAPMM.
In fact, we just hosted them for a little seminar here.
Yeah.
And then they visited BTS as well.
Yeah, and I have, the Food Center has been a member of the World Union of Wholesale Markets. I was a member and drafted the rules and regulations that govern that entity. It's located over in Europe. And I have a close relationship with all the wholesale market managers in Europe, as well as other places in the world, South America, in Australia and all. And we all get together times a year and we talk about what's going on an international level. And internationally, wholesale markets play a very prominent role in food distribution. In the US, we're playing a lesser role than they did when the market was first built, but nonetheless, we still are a significant player in food distribution. But in Europe, it's, you've got not only the distribution of food within the country it's located, but then there's the interaction between each country. It's like we have with the states, they have with individual countries. And the wholesale markets play a very prominent role over there.
That would be a nice field trip. That would be.
Great. I was just suggesting Rock Hall. You can start local and then we'll, everybody get your passport ready. Thank you, Don, because that's important. And again, it is a phased project. Couple little housekeeping things. We do need a motion to approve the revenue and expense reports that Angela shared with us. So I'll entertain a motion to do that.
Motion.
Thank you, Brian. Second. Carrie, thank you. Any other questions for Angela? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The other housekeeping thing, and I apologize, Stephanie, we have a new member and she doesn't have a clue who we are. So we have her bio, her resume, her life story. So I think before we go in, because then we do need to move into executive sessions after that. So I'm Gail Geiser. I retired from the University of Maryland College of Agriculture and Natural Resources 7 wonderful years ago. Still very involved with a variety of things, 4-H and youth development, agricultural education, dairy related as a volunteer. So we'll go around this table and then we'll go around the screen, so you all get ready.
I'm Angela Hopkins. I'm the Senior Director of Real Estate and Finance for the Food Center Authority. I am a CPA. I am a past auditor, and Ryan and I attended the same program at Johns Hopkins and the real estate development program. So we speak the same language.
I know.
I have to say.
Mark Ballard, represent, Secretary of Agriculture.
Executive Director.
Ryan Phillips, I work for the Army Corps of Engineers Baltimore District, and I'm a certified general real estate appraiser.
I'm Carrie Greer, and I'm a member of the Howard County. I represent the Howard County people, I guess, since I'm the Howard County resident. And I worked over the years in things such as food surveys through USDA. I was in food sales with a food distribution company. And so those are some of the background things that I bring, especially also that I was raised by an ag dad.
Good ag. And mom.
Yes.
Rebecca Raymond, Senior.
Gary Decker, Director of Market Operations.
And I'm Don Darnall, the Executive Director of the Maryland Food Center Authority. My background is I have a degree in engineering, I have a law degree, I have a doctorate in leadership development. Been spending 40 years in the food industry, so. Yeah.
Peggy Jory, and I am the Executive Project Coordinator. And I am your main contact for the board, so if you ever have any questions or want to get through to somebody else, feel free to reach out.
Oh, MIT, my name is Renee.
Renee. And then we'll go around the screen. I'll go left to right. Danielle?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Danny DePietro. I'm here in place of Ben Siegel, who is one of the deputy comptrollers. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Congratulations to Ben. He just had a baby, right?
Yes. Yep. Hazel last week.
Miriam.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Miriam Sebron. I'm an Assistant Attorney General and Principal Counsel to the Food Center Authority.
Wendy, good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. Wendy Napier, Assistant Secretary for the Department of General Services, Office of Real Estate, and I'm here on behalf of Secretary Chaudhry.
Anja?
Yes, good morning. My name is Anya Lindner. I work for the Maryland Food Center. I'm the IT risk manager.
And April, you're.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm April in my car, Richardson, and I am a lawyer. I am a real estate and business lawyer, a former federal prosecutor in those areas, but I also own a food manufacturing company whereby we produce baked goods for corporations and grocery stores.
Carlton, I think between you and Don, Carlton has the most seniority and experience with this fine group.
He's definitely someone that I'm happy to have. I'm happy to have everybody on the board.
Senior
Carlton has a lot of experience in food safety. So
Carlton, do you want to introduce yourself?
It'd be my pleasure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Good morning and welcome. My name is Carlton Brown. As Dr. Darnell has mentioned, I don't know how to do anything else except food safety. So, but no, I've spent years as a food safety expert with the Safeway Corporation, covering several states, and am a former director of food safety for the city of Baltimore. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you.
Yes. And phone number 443-353-9684.
That is Hanu, he's our HR.
Oh, Hano, okay.
Yeah, he's joined just so he can keep track of the meeting for us.
Okay, very good. And he's in the back of the building. We'll
He
see
is,
him.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, he is. And yeah,
Thank
he's been introduced previously, but
Yeah.
he's fairly new to us, and so we're happy to have him on board.
Okay. Stephanie officially starts July 1, but we're thrilled that you were able to join us today because we won't meet again until September, right? Okay. Very good. Okay, so now I have this wonderful cheat sheet. There's no further business for the open session. I need to ask for a motion to close the open session and then move into executive section to consider a matter that concerns the proposal for a business or industrial organization to locate, expand, or remain in the state. That can all be one motion? Yeah.
So moved.
Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Susan. Again, only in the last 15 months, we are following rules, formal public open meeting access procedures. So we have that motion on the table to close the open session, move into executive session for the reasons stated in number 4. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so the open meeting